Hey everybody, welcome to episode number 105 of the Addiction Unlimited podcast. I'm your coach, Angela Pugh, helping you get that sober life you want. You know, I don't believe that getting sober has to be hard or awful or scary. Like, this is the most fun I've ever had, honestly. Anxiety doesn't rule my life. I'm an honest and respected person. My family loves to have me around now. I'm happy and healthy, and I have the best friends of my life. I mean, true friendships. And none of that is awful. I think it's a great journey to be the person you always wanted to be before you became a prisoner to the wine. So I say, don't be scared. Have fun. Sobriety is amazing. How many times have I said, I've got a great episode for you today? I know I say it every time, and I mean it every time. And I mean it again today. You know, I used to record all of my episodes in person, and I really miss doing that. There's something so special about the energy you share with someone in the same room, and the connections we make with each other is truly amazing. And today's interview made me super sad to not be in person because this is someone I admire and have admired on social media for a long time. She has been to the depths of addiction, the depths of trauma, and she's a real 100% true warrior. And I would have loved the opportunity to sit with her IRL, in real life. For those of you who don't know, IRL is in real life. And I bet we could have talked all day, honestly. I tell you all the time to never underestimate your strength as a person with addiction. There's nothing you can't overcome and nothing you can't survive. Even when it's terrifying and overwhelming and totally frustrating, you feel like you're at your wit's end, you can't take another moment of it, I promise you, you will get through because we are the strongest people on the planet. And today's guest is a true example of that. She has an amazing story, a book that is a phenomenal tale of life and tragedy and heartbreak. And I'm about halfway through the book right now, and I can't wait to finish the rest of it. Like literally from page 1, I was kind of blown away. So I'm super excited to finish it. And if you are in the Inner Circle membership, I have a special video segment with Jen that will only be available for our members. And a huge thanks, by the way, to our Inner Circle members. You guys have me so excited to continue to provide amazing content for you, more videos. There are some super exciting things coming up in May. We're going to do a sober vision workshop to break down your vision for your life and your new sober life and put together a step-by-step plan to make it happen in your life in a way that works for your lifestyle, like totally personalized. I'll walk through every piece of it with you, and it's going to be incredible. And pay attention to your emails because that announcement and sign-up information will be coming out soon too. And a quick note on email before we dive into this episode. If you are one of the many people that have signed up for a free consultation with me, make sure you're watching your inbox to get scheduled. I always get a lot of requests for free consults, and my team is amazing at responding within 24 hours to get you scheduled as quickly as possible. And I know oftentimes when you reach out to me for a consultation, like you're in a situation and you're ready to get to work immediately. And I want to accommodate that for you. But if you don't respond to our emails, it makes it a little bit difficult. So know that if you submit a form, you will get a response within 24 hours. If you don't see a response, please check your spam folder. And if you filled out a form and then changed your mind, just let us know so we don't keep bugging you, right? That way my team can move on and spend their time on people who are ready to get to work, and you can reach back out when you're ready. And I'm going to link all of that in the show notes too, as always, like how to sign up for the Inner Circle membership, how to request a free consultation. All of that's on the website at www.myrecoverytoolbox.com. There are sign up forms all over the place on there. There's a whole page that explains Inner Circle and everything you get, all the value in that. Super inexpensive. Again, www.myrecoverytoolbox.com. And I will link that in the show notes for you so you can click right from your podcast app. Are you ready to dive into this episode and hear this epic story with mental illness and cults and trauma and addiction and survival? Let's do it. Here's Jen Elizabeth. Let's take a minute and welcome Jen to the show. Jen, how are you?
Hi, I'm great.
Thank you so much for being here.
It's so nice to see your face. Right? It's so nice to see any adult face at the moment.
I know, right? Like we're all in quarantine hell right now.
I mean, I love my children, but I'm just ready for adults. Yeah.
I'm ready for the gym. I miss the gym so much. It's starting to kind of drive me crazy.
Yeah, it's amazing. I really kind of thought I was like super, my stay-at-home game was strong, but it's fallen apart. I'm ready to, I'm just like, man, I want to go to the coffee shop and I want to like go shopping.
Yes.
I'm kind of missing my adventures for sure.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I'm a total introvert, classic isolator. I'm a little mad scientist entrepreneur. So I'm always kind of at home by myself, buried in my computer, So I thought at first I was getting through this really easily, but I will say the last 2 weeks have been incredibly challenging. And I'm definitely ready for it to be over. And I miss shopping too. I just said that to somebody the other day. I was like, I just miss that. Sometimes if I had an hour, I would just go to the mall. Like I just miss that,
So true. We don't even, the things I took for granted. Yeah, I definitely am missing.
Yeah, for sure. So tell everybody a little bit about you, who you are, what you do, and all that good stuff.
So my name is Jen, and my author name is Jen Elizabeth. I am a writer, author of Shape of a Woman. I am a recovery advocate, harm reduction advocate, love advocate, healing advocate. I'm just all about, healing and loving people exactly where they're at, and, inspiring and encouraging people just to really find that they're worth more than they think that they are.
I love that. Now tell my listeners, what does harm reduction mean?
So that's a very good question. So harm reduction, a lot of people have a misconception about harm reduction, that harm reduction means enabling addiction or whatever. But what the difference is that harm reduction supports people who use drugs. They don't support drug use. There's a difference. It's all about people first. So they're asking us to remove the stigma surrounding people that use drugs, which is what we all want in recovery. But they want to remove that stigma before we get into recovery. It's very interesting. Once we get into recovery, we become stigma fighters, right? All of a sudden, we don't want the stigma surrounding us. But the people that are still in addiction, we tend to kind of wait till they, shun them until they're ready to do it our way. So harm reduction says you matter now. Traditional recovery tends to say you matter once you choose to do it our way. And that's been super. It's actually, I did not start off that way. I was super hardcore, go out, hit every bottom you can hit. When you're ready to come to me and do it my way, I'm willing to care about you or care for you.
Mm-hmm.
And over the past couple of years, like I can't anymore, because I remember exactly what it was like to not know what I would even be fighting for anyways. And I think people matter. I think people that use drugs matter. And I don't want to, judge someone for the ways that they are surviving being in their own skin, whatever that happens to mean. So harm reduction includes using clean needles, testing, safe injection sites. It also provides lots of recovery resources, mental health counseling. It also includes, people in the sex industry. It just basically says the people that are most vulnerable, we care about you now. We care about your health care now. We care about your rights now because we care about you as people now.
It's not necessarily after someone is sober, clean and sober, right? It's not like you're sold on abstinence and so now we're going to help you. But you're saying this is people still in active addiction, yep, having services and for safety.
Yeah, it's about, saying that I'm willing to love you now, no matter what your plans for the future with your addiction are. And what happens is that love and that kindness and that compassion plants a little seed in someone. And believe it or not, those little seeds matter. And those little acts of, even as bizarre as it may sound as someone who's not familiar with addiction, but using a clean needle, that shows that you love yourself just a little bit. And those things go a long way. Mm-hmm. And so that's just been really important to me. I just cannot in my heart anymore turn people away who are not willing to get sober yet. Mm-hmm. And I think about my own children. If my own children were to, fall into addiction, would I want them to at least have health care? Absolutely.
Yeah. Tell everybody a little bit about your journey.
Oh, well, my journey has been a long one. So let's see. I would say my journey started when I was about 3, which is probably something interesting to say when I'm talking about an addiction journey. But my addiction has been all about emotions and behaviors. Mm-hmm. And those emotions and behaviors started ever since I can remember. I was born into a house of a lot of abuse and a lot of addiction. And, ever since I have my very first memories are of me avoiding pain and hiding from my reality and shrinking myself and begging for love and all the things that we do as adults in addiction, right? It's all the mm-hmm. same emotions. It's everything underneath that surface was the exact same as a little girl. My mother unfortunately has a lot of mental health problems and there was a lot of abuse, and I just wanted her to love me so much, and she just wasn't able to. And so what happened is that it didn't make me change how I saw my mother. It made me change how I saw myself. And so the girl that I looked at in the mirror was worth nothing, because if mommy couldn't love me, then no one can love me. And we, my parents, who were just, when it really all comes down to it, my parents just had no coping skills to deal with life. It's just been generations of dysfunction and trauma and abuse passed down and passed down. So they joined a religious cult, and I think they were just looking for answers for themselves. It was kind of the thing back then a little bit more than it is now. It's really super weird now. I mean, everyone's like, you were in a cult, but back then in like the 70s, there was a lot of fanatical cults going on, a lot of fanatical religious movements. So we moved across the country to Alabama, and we all lived in the same town. We went to the same school, ate at the same co-op. We weren't allowed to talk to any of our old family. And over time, they separated us and segregated us. And the abuse became more and more. It was financial, spiritual, emotional, physical, And then I, coming from the home that I came from, I was starving for love. I just wanted someone to tell me that I was good. And I just wanted someone to show me attention and see me. So one day an elder, called me in his little office, and he started coloring with me and singing me songs and, doing all the things that I craved at home. I was just desperate. And not to get too triggery, but long story short, that elder ended up molesting me until we finally fled that situation. And I never told anybody. I never even, I just pulled my dress down and went out of his office and went back to church, and thought that this is what I was supposed to do in order for God to love me, in order for people to love me, was to lay down and let people touch my body however they wanted. And that carried on throughout my whole life. The way that that's why my book is called Shape of a Woman, because I was shaped a certain way, but I'm not bound to how I have been shaped. So I was shaped a certain way. I did feel worthless. I did think that silence was my only option. And I did think that the only reason I was born was to give myself to whoever may ask for it. So we fled the situation when I was 10 and moved here where I live now. I've lived here since I was 10. And I thought in my 10-year-old smarty pants brain that, you know, once I leave there, it's all over. Then I can forget about it and we can move on and it's a new life. And obviously that did not happen. I just, the nightmares and what I now know was CPTSD and trauma, and my eating disorders started flaring up and I started to self-harm and all these things. And I started to became fascinated, with suicide and contemplating killing myself. And very easily could have fallen into my mother's footsteps. My mother was always trying to kill herself. And then I found vodka, and I was 12 years old, and it was the answer for everything. You know, I firmly believe that alcohol and drugs saved my life at many points, until of course they flipped on me and ended up almost taking my life a million times. But I don't think I think I may have absolutely killed myself, or at least attempted to, had I not found that crutch, that tool. It was just a tool to survive myself.
Mm-hmm. It is a coping mechanism.
Yeah.
And it is, you know, one of the most cunning things I think about alcohol is that it does give you whatever you're looking for, right? Like, if I need to feel better, it will give me that. If I'm bored, it takes care of my boredom. If I'm sad, it will make me happy. If I'm happy, it will make me happier. If I'm having problems sleeping, it will help me sleep, right? Like, it gives you whatever solution you're looking for. And I really feel like that's how we end up trapped.
And what is so scary is that I just, you know, it's like you have no knowledge of that being a possibility, that things are going to turn really bad. You just innocently take a drink. And it's like, so many people in addiction and in addiction recovery have trauma. Mm-hmm. I mean, so many people in the world have trauma.
Yeah,
trauma
that's what I was going to say. I think
trauma can be anything. Trauma can be anything that your brain could not process at the time and that was out of your control, period, which can be a million things to a million different degrees. But that is like, you know, a prime target for addiction to creep in. Prime target. So little did I know, I had no clue about trauma. I had no clue that I thought everything that happened to me in that cult was my fault. I didn't think I was a victim of anything. I thought that everything was my choice and I was dirty and disgusting. And I took that drink, and I'm telling you, before that cup was halfway finished, I was plotting and planning and scheming in my mind already of how I was going to drink the rest of my life, because it was the first peace I had ever felt in my life, ever. And I did that from 12 on in my entire life until I got into recovery. I did that. I drank as much as I possibly can. And someone says, what does a 12-year-old alcoholic look like? Well, I don't really believe alcoholism has to do with how often you drink. It's about the obsession to drink. Mm-hmm. So although at 12 years old, I was not capable in the beginning of getting alcohol every single day, but I obsessed on it 24/7, and I searched for it, and I longed for that peace. And so it just progressed. It progressed. Alcohol I just started drinking more and more and more and more. And, I would wake up in the morning and drink, and I'd have to shake, all that stuff. And then in my early 20s, I had to have a wisdom tooth pulled, and they prescribed me Vicodin. And I'm telling you, alcohol is deadly. Okay. People have a very big misconception because alcohol is legal, that it's much safer. Alcohol is extremely deadly. It is just as deadly as opiates. The difference is that alcoholism takes a little longer to kill you usually, but opiates can kill you a lot faster. And opiates took my life like a thief in the night. I mean, it was instant. And from that first prescription, I was doctor shopping, ER hopping, having procedures I didn't need. But then buying pills on the street. I lost my apartment. I lost my friends. I lost everything. And I was living in flop houses and random apartments. And I was around my early 20s. I can't remember how old I was exactly, maybe 23. But I was on this guy's couch and he was a meth dealer. I mean, this is what happens to me from prescription pills. This is a very common, in fact, you'll hear that from so many people, and I'm sure you have.
Mm-hmm.
You know, from legitimately prescribed pills, here I am 6 months later on a meth dealer's couch. And I was so sick. I didn't have pills, and it's very difficult to describe opiate withdrawal unless you've been through it, but it is torture. And he said he had a guy coming to help me. I assumed the guy was bringing some sort of pills, and he showed up with heroin and a needle. And at that time, A, I had no self-worth. I did not care about myself. And B, I was so desperate. I just put my arm out without thinking twice, kind of like the drink of vodka. I didn't even think twice about what's going to happen to me because I didn't really care about me. And from that moment on, I was an IV heroin user. I started using meth with the heroin, and that lasted about 15 years.
There's no way to conceptualize really what can happen, like when you take that first drink. You know what I mean? Because like I was a late bloomer. I didn't really start drinking until I was about 20. I started working in bars, at which point it just became very normal because everybody I saw drank every day. And so I would have some drinks, but I always say I was kind of an accidental alcoholic because I just drank so regularly that of course I ended up an alcoholic, because I never stopped. But I love that you pointed out too, like I say that all the time, being an alcoholic, it's not about quantity or frequency of drinking. It's about your relationship. My relationship with alcohol was not right. I was using it the wrong way from the beginning. And because in the beginning of my drinking, I wasn't drinking out of control, right? I wasn't blacking out. I wasn't acting crazy. I wasn't getting DUIs. I was none of that. But I can look back now and see I drank alcoholically because I drank every day. And there's nothing normal about that either. Even if I was only having 3 or 4, that's just not a normal relationship with alcohol. When I think about non-addicted people, that's not how they're doing it,
Right.
So, yeah. And I relate to so many things that you say too. You have such a beautiful way with words. And I was thinking when you were talking about the feelings and like not caring for yourself and searching for love and going through the, being molested and not telling anybody. And I think that for me, I didn't have those extremes, right? But I can relate so much with those feelings, and I can relate so much to being in situations, intimate situations that I didn't necessarily want to be in. I can remember, having sex with someone I really didn't want to have sex with. But the honest to God truth was I was afraid to say no because I didn't know how he'd respond. And I thought it would get much worse if I did. And I just didn't love myself enough to just say no. Like I can relate to so many of those feelings and searching for that kind of love and acceptance and approval and doing it in all the wrong ways with all the wrong people. And you can't think of that, right? Like when you have your first drink, you can't conceptualize that that's where you're going to end up. Like I had no idea when I had my first drink at 20 years old, I had no freaking clue that the level of sacrifice that I would make in my life with time and like I didn't go to college until I was 37 because I was drunk, and I thought I was having this really fabulous life and I was the LA party girl bartender, and it was fabulous in a lot of ways, but it was also just an entirely wasted decade, So yeah, you can't, the first time you do anything, you can't see what might happen or what will happen, certainly if you have enough dedication.
Yeah, right. Dedication. I was very dedicated.
That's why I say everybody, I was a very dedicated drunk. There's for sure. I was
I was dedicated. And that's really interesting that you say that because people in recovery, are they not the most, we make amazing entrepreneurs. We make amazing business people, and we are so dedicated to what we choose to do after that. And it is true. We really do. We really are dedicated to whatever it is that we are doing. And I was dedicated to erasing my memories and just being as numb as it is humanly possible
Yeah.
without dropping dead, if possible.
Right.
Because
Right.
I was never, trying to kill myself in my addiction, but I didn't care if it happened, I
Mm-hmm.
guess. It was
Mm-hmm.
never a concern. Never, never, never a concern to me of whether, be careful, don't do too much, or, and it's so dangerous when you do use needles, because you just, once it's in, it's in. There is no, getting it out. It's, if you do too much, that's it for you.
Yeah.
So scary. So
It's
yeah,
crazy too. Like people, it's so fascinating to me that we are so dedicated and so driven for our addiction, right? Like there's nothing would stand in my way of my drinking and what I needed to do. But we get sober and all of a sudden we want to become wimps. You know what I mean? Like all of a sudden we're lazy and we're scared. And I'm like, you're seriously going to tell me that you're afraid to go to a 12-step meeting, but like you'll go to the dope man's house at 3 a.m. where there are guns and like
right.
favoring people, and right, like that's comfortable, but sitting in 12 steps for an hour is frightening, But yeah, it's just fascinating to me how we forget our strength. And that's what I truly believe it is. We have so much guilt and shame around what we did and how we did it, the choices we made, the people that we hurt. We get so wrapped up in that stuff that we just think we're all bad. And it's like, dude, you got to look at the good parts of us too. We are phenomenal people. We are the strongest people ever built. We are smart. We're funny. We're driven. We're committed. Like, I'm all right with this. Like I am not upset about being an alcoholic. That's the least of
Right.
my worries at this point.
Totally. I think, and I know I understand people first get in recovery, they have all this baggage and all this stuff, but I always just hope that everybody gets to that point, and I think it's possible for everybody where you get to a point where you don't look at that stuff anymore as this big shame bag. It's now like everything that has built you to be who you are today. That's where I've been at for the past few years. And man, what a difference, to finally say, hey, you know what? I wouldn't take a single moment of any of that back, because it's built me to be the woman I am today. And I like the woman I am today. And I have a purpose, and I have passion and compassion, and trauma has gifted me a lot. And I know that sounds strange and not everybody's there, and that's totally okay. But I know it is possible for everyone to get there at some point in their life, in their own time, that you look back and yeah, it's unfortunate the stuff that happened, but I can't change it. So
Right.
all I can do now is see the gifts in it. And trauma has gifted me an empathetic heart, compassion, creativity, so many things. Like I wouldn't change a single minute of it back, not a single minute at all. My addiction, none of it. I've lived under bridges. I had no teeth in my mouth hardly. I had abscesses all over my body. I was eating from garbage cans. I spent a year in a total drug psychosis, talking to myself like someone you'd see on a movie. In and out of jail, went to prison. And I don't look at any of that as like a shame, something to be ashamed of anymore. It's just my story. Yeah. And it gives me a story for someone else that's going to give them hope to change their life, or to know that no matter what their life is, the thing is that I wasn't worth any less than I am right now, ever once,
Yeah.
Even under the bridge, completely strung out, I was still valuable and worthy of life just as I am right now. I just didn't know it. I didn't believe it.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely didn't feel it, and I say about my 20s all the time that like, I wish I would have known how to protect myself better. I wish I was more attached to myself and who I was. And I wish I wanted to care for myself, because I just put myself in so many situations that caused long lasting damage, just because I just didn't know any better, honestly. And that's the other part of it too, is, as people, we don't make mistakes because we know they're mistakes most of the time,
Right.
I mean, addicts, we probably do a little more often than other people, but But usually when we make mistakes, we don't do it on purpose. We're doing something that we think is going to work, whatever that is, whether that's relationships, drugs, jobs, whatever. You don't knowingly walk into something knowing that it's a trap or it's not going to work. It's going to hurt you or harm you or hold you back in life. So I did the best I could do with the level of knowledge that I had.
Right.
And now I know more, so I get to do better, you know,
Right.
but back
So
then
true.
I didn't know any better. I just did the best I could with what I had.
So true. I agree completely. Which is why it's so important that we bring awareness. And it doesn't mean, I think there will always be people who fall into problematic drinking and drug use.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not one to think that addiction will ever be eradicated.
Mm-mm.
As long as there's pain in this world and there are drugs and alcohol available, people will fall into the same trap that we all do.
Mm-hmm.
We all did. But I am one to think that bringing awareness to trauma, bringing awareness to what happens in our childhoods and in addiction, what that does. And addiction alone by itself is a traumatic experience. Whether you believe we choose to use or we don't, after those choices, once we become addicted, we have lost the power of choice.
Mm-hmm.
And the opposite of trauma is choice. Trauma is everything you have no control over, either happening to you or around you. So think about a life in addiction or alcoholism. You wake up and no matter if you don't want to drink again, ever again, you're swearing to yourself, you have to, because you are then overtaken by the alcoholism. I did not want, believe me, to have my teeth fall out of my mouth and all this stuff. But if I did not have my drugs, I would have been so sick. I mean, so many things. So I lost the power to choose. And not only that, all the situations I put myself in, of course I was going to get raped. Of course I was going to get robbed. Of course. I mean, my goodness, I was like alone in the streets. Like, of course. So we put ourselves in these situations. Also, our addiction puts us in these situations where it's just so risky and dangerous. And trauma is like this loop. It's like this loop, especially in addiction, that just keeps falling into itself. It's like it starts off trauma from childhood, then you get more trauma. Then trauma increases your chance of substance use disorder. Then a substance use disorder increases your chance of re-traumatization because of your environment. And then it is a known fact that drug addiction and alcohol is a drug. It's difficult for me to keep differentiating, but drugs, whatever, also makes us less resilient to coping with trauma. It's like this loop that just goes and goes and goes and swallows itself. And it's like, until that loop gets interrupted, it just never ends. It truly never ends. So like I have been this past year, especially really, really, really spreading awareness about trauma recovery. I think everybody in addiction recovery should have some form of trauma recovery.
For sure.
Everyone.
I agree with that. There's no way, I don't think there's any way to live life and not have trauma. I think everybody has trauma because it's so many things, right? And one of the misconceptions is that trauma is war and rape and these things, but there are 1,000 everyday occurrences that are trauma. The death of somebody close to you, a bad car accident, a sports injury. One of the most challenging interventions I've ever done in my whole career is I had to do an intervention on a girl who was 22 years old. She was a ballerina and she injured herself. And she had been a ballerina since she was walking. Like it was her identity. It was the only thing she knew. It was the only thing she ever planned on doing. And all of a sudden it was taken away from her, right? And she just sunk into this addiction that was vicious. And I mean, that was her trauma. Now you wouldn't think an injury would be traumatic, but it was traumatic. And trauma is natural disaster, right? Like I've lost 2 homes to fire, once when I was a kid and once as an adult. Like that's trauma. Yeah. So I don't think there's any way to live life and not have some trauma, for sure.
No. And everybody, it's just like someone's pain tolerance. It's so personalized. Everyone's, trauma. I mean, I've had some pretty gnarly things happen to me in my life that I can honestly say, I don't even think twice about. It's really not a big deal to me. But the thing like with my mother is something that I am healing from probably the rest of my life. But there could be people that come from worse abuse or more, devastating abuse, who actually, it's not something that they really, it just, everybody's so different. And I never want to discount someone's trauma, but it is so important, because even if to me, sober is not the end game. Sober was the beginning game. There was no way I was going to heal from everything that I need to heal from if I was still numbing out. But that is not the end of the road for me. Like, my whole entire recovery is spent swimming in all the waters underneath that level of abstinence. It's like 10%. It's like a film. Sobriety is like a film. But the depth of everything else that I'm recovering from, that's where I live my life. That's where I'm spending everything, and I see people who are just focused for years and years and years and years and years on just the drinking and using aspect of their lives, and they're suffering. And I did that. My first couple of years in recovery, I thought drugs and alcohol were my problem. And if I could just remove them, I would be fixed, right? They're the reason I was homeless. They're the reason I was in prison. They're the reason I had wounds on my body. Like, that's it. That's my problem. But I was so wrong. And all this stuff from my childhood and all this stuff that happened to me in addiction and all these things and mental health issues and eating disorders, all these things just started surfacing. And at about 2 years in recovery, I started thinking about killing myself again. I thought, if this is what recovery is, I'd rather die. I would rather die than be sober and in this much pain. And I don't know, I mean, does that make sense? Like,
oh my gosh, totally makes sense. Like, I always say sobriety is just putting down the drink and drug. Recovery is the rest of the process.
Right.
And it's amazing. You get to a point that you realize that, like, putting down the drink and the drug is like the tiniest part of it.
It really is.
It's like you think, like, I was so many years like struggling, like, I need to quit drinking. I've got to get sober. I've got to get my shit together. And so many years I thought that was the thing. And it's like, so you get sober and it's like, holy shit, dude, very little of this really has to do with alcohol.
Very little.
Very little, right? And we were just talking about this in my group coaching literally the other night. We were having this exact conversation, and most of the people in my group coaching are in their first, most of them are in their first 90 days, right? And now we're in quarantine. So everybody's starting to recognize, like, we're all overeating and we're doing it's all behavioral now. And like, they're having this light bulb moment that we have all these other compulsions. It's like, right, because the alcohol or the drugs or the behavior is just a symptom of what's happening inside of me. There is a driving force that makes me want to seek something outside of myself to change how I feel on the inside. And it's not just substance,
No, it's totally not. Yep. It's so true.
So did you realize, like, how young were you when you realized, like, you really had a problem?
I would say, when I was 19, the only time I really maybe had a moment that I was like, because after that, I didn't care. I can honestly tell you, I never tried to moderate after. But when I was about 19, I remember I had a journal, and I remember trying not to drink beer, okay? Because beer made you fat. And I was super weird about my eating, and I had a lot of disordered eating issues. So it wasn't about the alcoholism or anything like that. It was just about beer makes you fat. So let's limit the beers. And I remember every day going in, and this was very early on. So I remember every day going in and saying, I'm only going to drink this many beers. And I could never do it. Never, never, never. I would fail every single day. There was not one day that I was able to be successful on this moderate, whatever. And then, I just gave up. And I remember friends, they started, like, this was when the zone diet came out, and it was like no carbs. So all my friends were like, all my drinking friends were deciding not to drink alcohol during the week to lose weight. I couldn't fucking do it. I could not. I could not. And I just, after that little maybe 6-month period where I was kind of maybe on the fence between, like, literally losing my entire existence and still have one foot in, like, normal young woman life. After that, I didn't care anymore. It was just all about running. I just running from myself, running from myself. And the more I ran, the more shit I had to run from. The more, here I'm running from my childhood, right? But as I'm running from that, I'm creating so much fucking wreckage behind me.
Yeah.
That my mountain behind me is growing bigger and bigger and bigger. Then I really gotta run, now I really need to run. I could have maybe turned around and had some, therapy, but now I'm really gotta run because now I got the cops after me and I have nowhere to live and I'm absolute menace to society. Not only that, I still have my childhood. I still have all that stuff.
Right.
My goodness, I ran till I was 34. That's how long. I'm on Friday. I'll be 9 years this Friday.
Nice.
Yeah. So 9 years ago on Friday was the last day, the day before that, but was the last day I ever drank and used. I was in prison using and drinking. My behaviors did not stop in prison. I was still, of course, seeking out anything to find relief from myself, and then on May 1st, 2011, I had a divine intervention. I don't ever force God or what your God looks like because I grew up in that. I grew up in someone telling me what God looks like. And I know how damaging that is. So whatever your higher power or universe or some people believe it's your own intuition, is your spirituality, whatever. I had a moment that, the sound I was sitting in my cell. I had nothing to show for my life. And I was sitting in my cell looking out this little tiny window at the smallest patch of grass that we called the yard. And all the sound left the room just for a second. And I had this sensation and words hit me. It just said, "This is your life." And it finally came over me that this was going to be the sum total of my life until my life was gone, until my addiction took me. And a tiny spark ignited that finally believed just a little bit that I was worth more than dying like that I didn't want and didn't deserve to overdose in some riverbed as a transient whose identification was pending. And that's the power of tiny sparks, right? That's the seeds that plant. Those are the seeds I'm talking about. It was a super tiny seed. I did not love myself on that day. I did not see anything for my future on that day. I didn't think that real life was possible for someone like me. Nothing happened on that, but a tiny spark that just said, well, maybe I am worth caring for myself a tiny bit more than allowing myself to, overdose in McDonald's bathroom and wait for someone to trip over my dead body. And no one knows who I am because I'm just a transient.
Yeah.
And that's the reality. That is the absolute reality. In fact, it blows my mind every day that did not happen to me. It's just mind blowing. And, it's just that little spark, it has been grown into a wildfire.
Yeah. I feel shocked every day of my life that I survived my 20s in many ways, right? Because I was not safe in any way. I was insane and on motorcycles and wasted and hanging out with total strangers, right? Like you meet people at the bar and drink together all night and feel like you're besties. And then all of a sudden it's 3 a.m. and you're at people's house that you've never met before. I mean, it's insanity. Yep. All of it's insanity. Not to mention, driving drunk. I drove drunk every day of my life. And there's just so many things. It's just heartbreaking. And for me, like, I don't even know that I had that spark of hope, right? Like my final thing was, I crashed my car at 70 miles an hour. I hit another person. I thought I killed them. And I was standing on the side of the freeway contemplating like how I was going to call my mom. And I have the dream mom, like the epitome of mom, like just so much integrity and honesty. And she loves in a way that I will never know anybody that has the capacity to love like she does. She's just so freaking good as a human. And I'm standing on the side of the freeway and I'm like, holy shit, dude. Like I have to call my mom and tell her I just killed somebody. And it's like everything I was feeling was not even about me, but it was about like, I just knew she was going to die. Like the minute the words came out of my mouth, I knew that her entire life was just going to fall apart in that conversation, and then the police came over and told me the guy I hit was fine. I was the only one injured. Yeah. But that was my moment, right? Because it never dawned on me. My whole drunken life, I drove drunk every single day. I was a bartender. I drove home from work drunk every day of my life. It never in all of that dawned on me that I could hurt somebody else. like I had hurt myself a million times over, ridiculous things, falling down, whatever. But it never crossed my mind that I could hurt another person, and certainly not seriously, right? Not seriously injuring or possibly killing someone. Like that had never crossed my mind. And in that moment, like the second they said that dude was okay, I was like, holy crap. Okay. Get it together. Well, first, hours later, when I was leaving the hospital, I decided I was going to kill myself. That was my best solution, right?
Okay.
Because I was in so much legal trouble. I was like, I'm never going to survive this. And so my best solution was that I had to die. And I think I just forgot or something. I don't know. I went into withdrawal.
Yeah.
And I was sidetracked and, whatever. But yeah, that was my best thinking,
Yeah.
and it's funny to me now too. I say this all the time that people want to get clean and sober and they want to, quote unquote, do it on their own. And when I think back, like my thinking was so broken in so many ways. I was not the person to try to get me sober.
Yeah.
Like I was not, my thinking was such a disaster. I could not rely on me. Like I had to have guidance, just like in every other area of life. When I want to improve in any way, I need guidance because I wouldn't need to improve if I knew what the hell I was doing, you know?
Right.
But yeah, it's just those crazy, but it is those just little tiny moments that are so life changing. And I think you'll probably agree with this too. That's why we do what we do. That's why I am so public about my story and my struggles and my trauma and my drama and all of that stuff, because somebody has to do that stuff. Like you don't know the people that you're touching, and you don't know every day you post something on Instagram, like where you're giving that spark to somebody else. And I know when I got sober, I needed other people to love me because I couldn't do it. I just wasn't even connected to myself. I didn't care about myself. I was mad that I was still alive. Like I never had a suicide plan, but I definitely didn't want to live. And I kept thinking I would go to sleep and never wake up. And I kept waking up, and I was so fucking mad every day that I woke up. And I was like, seriously, I have to do this again?
Yeah.
Like it was just torture. My life was like its own torture. And I was not the person to fix me. And I had to have other people that believed in me or loved me and to tell me what to do and how to show up. And I had to have that. And that's why we do this work. That's why we put it out there for everybody.
So true. If nobody talks about it, then nobody knows about it. And if nobody knows about it, people just going to continue to die from it.
Sure.
And worse than death is living like that.
So much worse. Yes.
The shame and all that.
Oh,
hell.
It's so gross. And I feel so bad for people too when people reach out to me for help and they're like in that space of like they know they need to quit, but they can't really commit. And I remember that space. Like I lived in that kind of wishy-washy place where I just couldn't commit to quitting. I lived in that for at least a couple of years. I knew I needed to stop. I just couldn't make myself do it. And that was absolutely the most miserable part of my addiction was that time. It was the most miserable part.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. When you're like one foot out of reality and the rest, one foot in reality, the rest out. Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
I feel like it's such a great time in recovery right now. I feel like any time you get in recovery is great, but the time that we're having right now, like with the healing community and the recovery community, man, it's just so huge and it's growing bigger.
It's so good. It's so freaking good
and
now.
People are just, when I first got in recovery, it was basically your only option was you had to go to AA or NA, which is fine. That's great, which is what I did. But there wasn't talk about inner child work. There wasn't talk about reparenting. There wasn't talk about EMDR therapy or anything. And especially like it was only about one thing, the box of this box. And now it's like, my goodness, it's such a beautiful time because now I just did an AA meeting yesterday. My recovery is so huge that I mean, my toolbox is gigantic. So, and I love that. And I encourage people to go outside of the box, and you don't have to leave AA. You can add in a bunch of stuff. In fact,
that's right.
I say go to AA, celebrate, smart, refuge,
Yeah.
and EMDR and work them all.
Yes.
What the hell? Go for it, man. It's amazing. Life is beautiful, right? That's the exciting part about recovery. But I was doing this, and I hadn't been a speaker at an AA meeting in a while. So I was like kind of nervous, I shared my thing. And and I was expecting, and there's a lot of older dudes on there, and I was expecting to hear, the old school, what happened was, it's like, it really showed me how open-minded and things are growing even in that community. They were really hip on the trauma thing. They were really like, wow, thank you for sharing about your childhood, because guess what? That's kind of what I've attributed a lot of my pain to, is and it's like, well, I was so surprised to hear that it wasn't just all the old school AA sayings. It was like really people, and it's like, that's so great. Like, we're just becoming so much more aware now. And
for sure.
in therapy, the therapy world, everyone's just becoming so much more aware and so much more open. And like, that's what we should be doing. Like, I was watching this documentary called Crowdsourcing or something. And it was about medical stuff. It was about this doctor that treats super difficult patients with like rare diseases. But what she does is she talks them, and then she like crowdsources to all these different specialists and all these different areas to come in and let's help this person and let's all get together. And that's what we should be doing in recovery. Instead of fighting over only this way or only that way, let's all reach out to each other and say, hey, you do EMDR. This person is giving, let's help people and let them search what is best for them. And let's all come together instead of fighting over, oh, harm reduction is bad. Someone's got to take care of these people before they come to recovery, if they ever do. That's what they're for. And then there's the 12 steps, and then there's smart recovery. And then there's, hey, if maybe you're still in a lot of pain after you're sober, maybe go to EMDR therapy, that is such a beautiful thing right now. I just, that's my biggest thing, is like, I don't want to fight over the path you take. I don't want to fight over any of that. I just want us all to come together and like share our resources and share our experiences and save lives.
I think people are surprised because I'm an AA person. So they think that I'm going to be anti other stuff. And I'm like, dude, I'm not anti anything. I'm down with all of it. It is one of the greatest things about recovery right now is there are so many tribes to be a part of, right? Like, there are so many things. And I finally was in a place last year, and I've been sober a long time too. And I was finally in a place last year that I did my own EMDR, for several months. And I think I'm going to start another round because it's just a process, right? But yeah, I'm with you. I love smart recovery, celebrate recovery. I don't care what you want to do. My thing is, I just want you to do something instead of doing nothing. That's it. And I will support you and love you, whatever that looks like. And we'll just figure it out one thing at a time.
So true.
But it's a beautiful time to be in recovery. That's for sure.
It really is. And I like that meeting yesterday. I wanted to hug those old men because they just really gave me a lot of hope about even the old timers. These men probably had 30 years. They've been big book thumping for, they just really were so receptive to my kind of, shocking, share a little bit and about my outside issues that I don't believe should ever be an outside issue. And I was just expecting all this, but it just was so loving and so amazing. And I thought, wow, it's really happening. Like, it is. Not every meeting is going to be like that. And that's why I say, like, when you go to one meeting and maybe you're treated poorly by somebody, that's like saying you meet one girl and that's the only girl in the world. And so you got to marry her. Hell no. I have found, find another meeting, find another group of people. There's more progressive. There's more old school. There's, find something else that works better for you. Or, hey, leave them all together and go to another path, but just some path. Something. And there's so many coaches now, like coaches and programs. They had none of this when it was, and I've only been 9 years. It was still very new, everything was basically, there was not much option. And I love
Well,
it.
I think coaching in general has really blown up in recent years,
Right.
and people specializing in their coaching. Like in my beginning for sure, like I was a life coach, right? Everybody was a very generalized life coach. The only person anybody knew of was Tony Robbins, and it was just a very different world back
Right.
then. But yeah, now you get to specialize and do a lot of fun stuff. And I think too, the people that really know what they're doing and have legitimate education and experience. And when
Right.
I say education, I don't mean college, right? I did a lot of freaking college, and I'll tell you, it was one of the biggest wastes of money I've ever spent, because a lot of it really did not teach me anything. The majority of what I know is self-taught and through experience and just reading and researching and educating myself, which
Right.
is a great thing that we have the internet and we can do that. But I think those of us that really know what we're doing and we have valid experience and know
Right.
how to walk people through a journey will prevail for sure. But it is pretty popular right now
It
to be a
is. I
coach.
actually, I have a lot of times people reach out to me, are you a coach? I'm looking for a coach, which I'm not. So I was like, well, maybe I should look into it. Oh my God. I just Googled, I thought maybe there's maybe 5 or 6 big schools, where you get accredited of something. Oh my, it's a bazillion, and you
Yeah.
can spend $25 to 5,000, I mean, I'm like,
Oh, there are some that are 20,000,
oh,
25,000 year-long
and I'm
programs.
like,
Like,
how do
yeah,
you know? And what's the right, and because if I were to do anything, I would want to have some sort of schooling behind me. I know
yeah,
most would be my life experience, but I would not, I would want to know, I want to have something, because I know there's people
yeah,
that are coaching now that have zero school at all. Yeah,
yeah,
they just say they're a
yeah.
life coach.
Well, I think that it's definitely good to have some sort of certification
Right.
in that, right? I've done probably over the years, I've probably done 10 different life coach things because I like to know what's going on and what the new trends are and,
Right.
what people are studying, and because all that stuff is so helpful. But I mean, listen, going to college and getting a bachelor in psychology is not going to do shit for me when it comes to life coaching.
Right.
It's just not. So yeah, I think you have to have some education, certainly getting started, because
Right.
part of it is figuring out your own belief system. Like I coach people based on a framework that I know works because it works for me and I've done it with thousands of people. But it's my kind of belief system and my process. So I think you do have to have your
Right.
own foundation to coach from,
Right.
but yeah, it's pretty fun though. It's the best work ever. Like I would
Yeah.
never want to do anything else.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I hear people love it. And it's really amazing how many people are really utilizing coaches right now, especially right now with this.
Well, I was a counselor also because I have all of that college education too. And I practiced as a counselor for a while because I thought that there was more credibility in having all of the college, right?
Mhm.
But I have to tell you honestly, when I changed my title, when I got rid of counselor altogether and just committed to coach as my working title, my business increased 25% the first month,
Wow.
because I think it has such a positive connotation. Like coaching is fun,
Right.
it's forward moving. And I say, like, I feel like counseling and therapy are kind of geared to like, let's figure out what's wrong with you.
Right.
And coaching is like, dude, we're all a hot mess. Let's just figure out how to be better.
Right.
Like I don't want to focus on all the negative points.
Right.
Like let's figure out, let's get into some action and do some things to heal ourselves and feel better and do better and treat other people better and treat ourselves better. It's just a whole different kind of thought process, I think.
Yeah. Coach makes it sound like you're going to have your own personal cheerleader, your own
Yeah,
personal. Yeah.
and you kind of do. And I think part of it for me too is that I didn't love a lot of the boundaries of counseling and
Mm.
therapy because it's very strict and they want to keep you in this little box.
Right.
And like a good alcoholic, I'm not good at boxes. I don't want to be in a box. And I liked, as a coach, like I can go meet my clients at an AA meeting, right? I
Right.
have that freedom. I can go meet you for coffee. Like we don't have to be in the office. You can have my cell phone number. We can text,
Right.
like
So true.
it's just, it's so much it's more personal and person to person. It's not clinical where there's this power differential and, oh, that's
Right.
my therapist. They're the smarter person. I have to do everything they say. It's peer to peer.
Right.
Like we're just people working together, you know,
Right.
it's way more fun. Yeah.
That's great. I love that.
Okay. Last question, favorite question.
Yeah.
What is your favorite thing about being a sober person?
My favorite thing. That's a hard, only one. My favorite thing about being a sober person is probably the fact that I finally have the possibilities are endless for me. That I finally am not in this shrunken world of like, I don't have anywhere to go and I'm relying on substances to get by and I'm relying on running and I'm relying on hiding for myself. Like the world is just opened up and that I wake up in the morning and I can really do anything I set my mind to. That there's nothing holding me back anymore. That's probably my favorite because then, you know, the possibilities have been endless. And I'm a mother now and I have a house now and I don't, you know, there's so many things, but I think that's probably the best general thing is that I'm not trapped anymore.
Totally. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had no idea like how much power I had in my own life, right? Like I had no idea how much control I had over what my life looks like and what I do and the choices I make. I just didn't know that before. And I love that because you can build it to be whatever you want.
Yeah. Whatever that means for anybody, man. For me, that's the best part is just, I'm not shackled down anymore. And so whatever I want to do with my life, the sky is the limit. And it's just amazing. It's just amazing how long I lived like that.
I know, right? I was just saying that the other day. I was like, I look back and I'm like, how in God's name did I live like that every day? Like, how did I wake up every day feeling that disgusting, like physically and mentally, like every day? That is brutal.
It's just, to me, it's like, okay, so here we are in this pandemic, right? And I wake up and I'm a little bit butthurt. I can't go to the coffee shop. And I'm a little bit butthurt that I can't go to the mall, right? And I want to go tanning and my Botox is wearing off and, you know, shit like that, right? But I lived in absolute filth my entire life. I mean, really, like here I am. I'm like, whoa, how did I survive? I don't even know. I was so, I was, like we said, determined. I was a tough cookie because now I'm like, I miss my favorite Starbucks or my favorite coffee shop. You know? Back then I was like eating out of a dumpster and thought it was a good day. It was a good freaking day because I got this score on the dumpster. Like, and I thought that was like, cool. That's life. That's, you know, amen. Now I'm like, in fact, Starbucks not that good anymore. I need to go to my little foo-foo, you know, artesian coffee. Like, but that is like, man, recovery, dude. Like, the life is so freaking great. It's like, I wish I could just touch people and like it could flash forward to what their life can be because it's so hard to see. It's so hard to see when you're in that mess.
Yeah, for sure. Jen, thank you so much for coming on and doing this episode with me. It's so good to talk to you. I love your story. I love listening to you. I think all the listeners will too. Thank you.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm honored.
Yeah. And for all you guys out there, I hope you're having a fantastic day. We're going to put all the links to all the good stuff in the show notes so you can find Jen and find her book. I so recommend you check out the book. It's really good. And we'll put that in the show notes. Have a fantastic day. We'll see you next week. Okay, here's what I want to know as a 12-stepper. What was your favorite part of the steps?
My favorite part of the steps, well, probably my least favorite, but the best part of the steps was probably my 4th and 5th step.
It was. See, so many people say that, and I just didn't have that experience. That's why I love asking this question.
Really? I think that step probably did the most for me as far as just being able to verbalize all that stuff that I thought I could never say to anybody. But you know, all the steps are great, of course. But my favorite part about this 12-step program is the fellowship. I have to be honest.
For sure.
And I totally get that people say, you know, meetings without the steps is like whatever that shit is.
Yeah,
I get it.
yeah.
I get it. But that really, my recovery has branched out so much. I do a lot more trauma recovery now at my phase that I'm in now in recovery. But the fellowship is still with me. The fellowship is so, and I mean, it's like priceless. The people that actually you don't feel ashamed around and like that love you, no matter, like you were saying, that love you before you even realize you're lovable. That is so important. My God.
It's so important. And I tell people this all the time too, that I believe honestly, the greatest thing about 12-step programs is that they're everywhere all the time.
And they're free.
Right? So, and they're free. And like I have a loving family everywhere I go across the globe. There is nowhere that I'm alone. There's nowhere that I can't connect with people. I've been to meetings all over the world. And what a blessing, right? To be able to go anywhere on the planet, to be able to go anywhere and walk into a room full of friends that require no explanation, no introduction, right? We're just the same and we love each other and protect each other, period.
Yeah. No, I agree. And nothing's perfect. People find faults in anything, and that's fine. But the one thing I have to say is that it is everywhere and it's free. And until somebody with all these fancy programs tells me it's free, we're offering it to everybody free, we're done charging, then I'm going to continue to tell people, hey, reach out, try this, try AA and NA. If it works, if it's not your jam, it's not your jam. There's other stuff. Right. But so many people have so many bad things to say, but by the way, my program's $700. My way of doing it, 700, or, but I hate AA and NA, or I hate this. And I get it. There's things that sucks or whatever. But I hate that. It's such a bummer because it is. I'm sorry. I could not afford my own cigarettes when I smoked back then. I couldn't afford a pack of gum. I could not afford my own treatment back then. Like, thank fucking God that there was AA and NA. Thank God, because it was free, accessible. There were tons of times all day. I spent I'd be there morning, noon, and night. I had nothing else going for me, Well,
also that fellowship will, when you have an oh shit moment in the middle of the afternoon and you don't have anybody to talk to, you can always show up at your AA meeting and get help and be safe. Like I said, be protected and be loved.
So true. Yeah. There's nothing else like it yet.